I think there was concern.
Okay. Yes. Insurance is mentioned.
I would, yeah. Not.
This is the report. You know, I'm gonna have a nice check. And I'm citing even though. Really. Well, I got a pair of sunglasses. I can't tell you how many. Because I'm not.
It was.
Yeah. If we were to resist.
Get those glasses.
Oh, my gosh. Now there's.
I was looking at the photo, that had a T-ball photo, and I kept for years, and I was looking at it, and moved into the Dallas and unpacking there, saw the photo, and then I was looking.
I mean,
He sold me this house. And then of course, we had people that we knew. Like one of my really good friends. Get his car and. things like that. Or no.
Good evening, everybody. Go ahead and get started. I just looked out there. There's nobody walking down the hallway, so I figure it's pretty safe. First off, thank you. Thank you so much for coming one more time. And I promise it's just one more time.
Never trust you.
Never trust. I think for me, this kind of proves the importance of what we're doing and the dedication of people that we're seeing in this room right here. And I want to make sure people are aware of how important that is, not just to us that are actually conducting the exercises and doing this effort, but also I think with the school district and the school district representatives are here. That's important. From one major standpoint is tonight, while it's going to be the last community advisory group meeting that we're going to have, and hopefully it'll be a fun one. It's not the last of the engagement and the need to keep everybody in this group involved as we're moving ahead. We'll talk a little bit about that later on as we're talking about next steps. The primary thing we're going to do tonight is hopefully have a little bit of fun. We're going to do our build a bond exercise. But before we do that, let me go through our agenda here. I wanted to reintroduce my cohorts here, Alec, Joe, and Liz, who's been hovering around either on the screen or up in the balcony in the last few meetings, but they're going to help facilitate the exercise tonight. That said, what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to go back through and share the schedule again. We can't share that often enough. And then we're going to do a little bit of a recap, and it's going to be a little bit of discussion. There were a lot of questions at the last advisory group meeting. And I wanted to make sure that there were any questions that were asked at that meeting that we could try and address those before we go any further. Okay, once we do that, then we're going to go ahead and introduce the exercise that we're going to do tonight. And that's going to probably spend the majority of what we're going to be doing tonight is our build a bond exercise. We'll do the activity. We'll report back individually as groups. And then after we do that, we'll talk a little bit about the bond timing itself. And the way things appear to be leaning at this point, I think we could start to make some decisions as far as that goes. We'll have a bit of a group discussion, make sure everybody is understanding of what it means. And then we'll go through some next steps. There's a lot of stuff we want to share there as well. But that we'll save that one for the end. So kick things off. Here is our schedule. And I've cut off all the work that we've done back over here. We've done a lot of work getting up to this point. And I really appreciate the fact that everybody wanted to come back this one last time and do this build the bond exercise. As you can see, we're kind of starting to bump up against the timing relative to whether or not we go out for a May bond or whether it's a November bond, and that'll play into our discussion we're going to have a little bit later. Okay. But the key here is what I did a little bit of a comparison of what a May bond looks like here versus what a November bond looks like right here. And this is a little bit about what Jeremy shared at the last meeting and what we involved relative to finalizing the bond, ability for community feedback, and then board analysis. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later on. Okay. Any questions about the schedule at this point? No. Let's do a little bit of recap. There were a lot of questions that were asked at the last meeting. And I think we would like to be able to answer as many of these are. But one of the things I think that we realize, those of us that are kind of trying to facilitate this and also within the school district leadership, is that there are a lot of questions out there that you were asked that the community is asking as well. And so what they're trying to do right now is to put together kind of a frequently asked questions list. And that's kind of what this is right here. These are all the questions that were asked at the last meeting. And formulate some responses to these. Some of these we can answer tonight if you want us to. But other ones are going to take a little bit further. I think some of these we've actually addressed in the previous community meetings. Things like work with what's planned for the current Dallas High School building. That one is a lot more complex. Right? But there's some things that we can talk about tonight relative to that as well. There's some ideas that are going through the leadership relative to what potentially could happen to this facility once the new high school is built. One of the questions that came up relative to the other district properties, and I think it's kind of tied to any current debt on district properties. And is this one that we wanted to kind of touch on at all before we go? I think it's relevant. Yeah. So, as far as plans for the other district properties, you want to talk about that a little bit, or?
Yeah, I can. I don't want to jump too far. The I actually brought my list. I know nobody wants to look at my spreadsheets.
Wrong.
Yeah, spreadsheet for that. I have a spreadsheet for that. You would be surprised. So this particular document has all of our acreage, and just to give a whole recap, the district owns 203.78 acres according to tax records. And as we look through it, you know, there's all of our school buildings, so Colonel Wright, Dry Hollow, the high school, middle school, we have Thompson Track, we own Watonka, of course. Then we have where our district office is located, plus this little plot. Chenoweth Middle School, the vocational program at the high school owns a little piece of property on Heritage Loop that they used to run vocational programs on. But working with some local realtors, I did get some cost market analysis on a few of them. One of them's already been surplused, which is 64 acres on Columbia View Drive. It does look like a tentative market analysis, depending on a lot of factors, could be 4 to 5 million. And because that property is already surplus, our plan was to put that on the market. So we're going to go ahead and start that probably next week, the week after. So that will be an easy one. We
That's a question about that.
no.
Okay. You can ask a long question. Well, and it just seems like every time time that you guys get money, it all goes to the general fund. Is there any chance this can get put towards this?
Yes, there's a couple things we want to consider with that. One, yes, it can go towards the bond, you know, we can include it in the whole package. Or we can look at doing repairs and renovations in our existing buildings, because if you see a list, we have quite a few of them that we really do need to start nailing down. So me as the finance person, what I don't want to do is put the district in a situation where we do have to take out debt to pay for something like a failed alarm system, a roof that will no longer work. We have some that are in pretty bad shape. So I'm strongly encouraging, we have to start building up capital projects, you know, so I would recommend that, but having said that, that doesn't mean can't go towards the debt.
But it doesn't just automatically, like,
Absorbed in the general fund wouldn't be my recommendation.
Oh, that's true.
That's
Sorry,
scary.
yes. Because it disappears, sorry,
Oh, I think it disappears more in the general fund than it does when you put it in a separate.
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I would recommend not putting it in
Oh,
the general
good.
fund.
Okay,
Yes.
I had one other question, we did. Is Chenoweth Elementary on your property
Yes,
list? Okay.
yes.
Oh, it's Mosier. Huh?
Mosier is not owned by the school district. It was given to Mosier Community, the charter school.
oh, okay, so they own their property.
2004, 2005. Yeah,
Okay.
they do. There were repairs that needed to be done, and it looks like the district was like, yeah, go ahead. Here you go. We'll give you the property. You fix it.
So I didn't know they.
That's a great question or observation though, too, because we often hear that of properties that people perceive that we own, that we don't, so it's great to clarify.
When I first moved here, I didn't know what we owned, so that's why I ended up on all the tax records.
And the old Chenoweth Middle School is still ours also?
Yes,
Is it condemned?
which one? I don't believe Chenoweth Middle School is condemned. There is actively some work with the community college and the ESC that we're looking at using that space.
Okay. We've also continued to use that for athletic,
Yes.
the gym for athletic events.
I knew the gym was used. I
Yeah.
just didn't know if that's.
Gym was used, yeah. And there's some concerns with that building. The water hasn't been on since 2005, I think. So they will scary when it comes on.
Yeah, no water.
So the property we've looked at is, of course, Columbia View, but that is keeping 35 acres for the possibility of in the future, the goal was of the district to put an elementary school, or at least leave that option open. So we're not putting that on the market at this time, nor did I get a market analysis.
So is that the 64 minus 35 would be what we would sell?
No, it's 64 and 35, so there's 100
okay.
acres, 65 of the 100, and it's already taxed separately, you know, set in 2 different tax lots. So the other option we've looked at is where the district office is. A lot of people call it the White House. You know what that means, across from Watonka. It's split up in a bunch of different little properties, but it looks like a market analysis today, it's worth 800 to $1 million. So we've talked about district office staff could move over here, but of course we have to have the dominoes all fall into place, so we couldn't put that on the market today. But we would intend on moving to this building and selling that, hoping that, you know, that would build community housing, depending on who bought it. And, you know, like I said, Heritage Loop is it's owned by the vocational program at the high school. We will look at possibly putting that on in the future. But again, that's to benefit the high school vocational education program who originally purchased it, so wasn't purchased with.
Where's that? I don't know what that is.
I don't know wherever Heritage Loop is.
I think it's on the waterfront. I think it's part of the, no.
Nope. Phil says no.
Oh, it's.
Kurt knows where it is. He may be.
It's a development, it's here we call it, it's just slightly, I think, south.
Guess I don't.
Probably walk there.
It's off website.
It's in the middle of the Chenoweth district,
Yeah.
Oh, there's food. Oh, okay.
Used to be a
Okay.
swamp.
where the Heritage Church is.
Behind Weimar.
Behind Weimar.
No.
Really?
You know what, like Pomona Meadow is the 55, so just northwest and it's on 10th Street there.
Okay.
10th and 7th. It's kind of where here. There's some brand new houses that have been, or newer houses that have been built there.
All right, that's kind of a really quick recap. Any questions?
Is any of this information can be shareable or?
I can make it shareable.
Yes, and we are
We'll
working
add
on
to these.
addressing all of these FAQs in a paper document that would be posted to the bond or up on the bond website.
Right. Yeah.
What about Quinton Street and Thompson Track?
Yep, we do on Thompson Track and Clinton Street. We don't have any plans to put those in the market. We'd like to rejuvenate them and continue to use them for our sports programs. They're key locations for baseball and the middle school.
Middle school track.
But if you had a bigger, better facility.
Oh, athletic facilities, it depends if athletic facilities and from when I moved here, Quinton Street ballpark seems to be an icon for a lot of this
Definitely. You
community.
just see Thompson Track and like a long way to the middle school.
It's used a lot by the community.
Yeah.
As a walker, there's a lot of people up there all different hours of the day.
And we talked about options of when the high school is put on Watonka, we need also soccer space. Is there a way for us to add soccer to the Thompson Track? So there's still options. We do use it frequently. The community does, but we actually do use that.
But at some point could potentially it get bought out by a community outfit, keep it as is, but you're not. Parks and Rec. I didn't put out anybody, but yeah, something of that nature so that it wouldn't be, again, maybe generate some income, but still have it need for green space and. I don't know.
Yeah, depends on what the options are that are in the new program because we want to keep expanding sports, not.
These questions right here, if there's anything else up here that we might want to touch on, I don't want to spend too much time, but like she mentioned, we're actually formulating a very simple answer to each one of these questions that will be provided. I know that these all came out of the last meeting. All these questions. There are a couple on here, kind of talking about a little bit tonight, what happens with the Innovations Academy. And that will be part of the build a bond exercise, where it could potentially go. The last two that are on the list here, there was one question relative to potential energy cost savings. And also why we can't renovate the existing high school. I do have a slide on the second one. The potential energy cost savings is a pretty complex one to answer. We do have a lot of the energy data district-wide. And we do have it for this building itself. You have to remember that a facility like this, its energy usage fluctuates depending on the time of year. You want to look at it from an overall year standpoint, but the reality of it peaks during the winter and then it drops down in the summer, it's at its lowest. What we can kind of tell you that if you look at a new facility built to exceed current Oregon energy standards, compared to an existing facility of this age, you should see about a 20 to 25% savings on energy costs with comparable types of energy. And that's a big caveat there too, because you got to remember, this building was built when you didn't have the amount of electrical energy that you currently do right now. That's why the building is on gas for its boiler. But if you use like an electric boiler, there might be some carbon offset there. There might be some energy savings, but the real key to this whole answer to this is when you build a new high school, you're adding more square footage to the district. So any energy savings you might realize, you're still spending more. It's about what happens to those other facilities, whether they're surplus or whatever they are. That's where the real savings ends up being. So reuse of this facility and the new, you can't compare the two and say there's going to be savings because now you have two buildings that you're actually with. Yeah. But we'll have hopefully a less wordy response to that one. And then I think we also talked a little bit about why we are not considering the renovation of this school, primarily because the size of the site, support of the parking, which I think everybody got to experience again tonight with the basketball game going on. And alternative learning CTA programs are remotely located, and then with the cost of that, just dealing with all of the facility deficiencies doesn't even address the programmatic deficiencies. And we'll try and summarize this a little bit better, but this is the slide that was from the last meeting. Are there any additional questions? Go ahead.
I don't think this has been asked yet, but the county just purchased 155 acres, just west of Watonka. In hopes of building an outdoor recreational sports complex. And I was wondering if the school district had considered to lower the cost of the bond. Instead of building some outdoor recreation facilities, athletic facilities on the campus, is to utilize the 150 acres, which is just west of the town.
That's a good question. Was the district aware?
Yes, it is. But our bond costs don't include athletic facility rebuilds right now unless we get past the 120 million. And there's a huge, not huge, there's a challenge with being on site. So one that creates that team community spirit for the program itself. And then we'd also have to transport students back and forth to locations. So that's a challenge now with the high school being here and those fields being over there. So we'd like them all encapsulated in the same space, but at that same time, the 120 million doesn't include athletic upgrades.
Does or does not?
Does not.
It's just not.
It's just the high school.
One of the things we're gonna do tonight is, as part of this exercise, is we're gonna take a look at those costs, what it would be. And then we'll also look at all the other things that you could be doing with that money and make some decisions. What do we trade off? What do we feel? Well, you know what, this is actually probably. Let me go back. That'll be a good lead into the exercise.
Just let me clarify too, it wouldn't be transportation, it's literally within walking distance from.
It's right across Chenwood. It's what-
Okay,
That's what we're working on.
but the 120 million doesn't have any athletics built into it. Poor athletic directors tired of me here and you don't have anything in there. So we're getting nice.
We do have one more slide that we've added in here. This doesn't look like the last slide that we shared, but it's the same data relative to construction costs nationwide and locally. And what this does is this is actually from a different source. I believe this is from Ryder Hunt. Ryder Hunt is the cost consulting service that actually works with the Oregon Department of Education. And they help to collect a lot of data related to construction costs regionally. And they provide that information to ODE for all the facility condition analysis data. But when you go in and do your analysis, all their cost per square foot numbers are based upon this type of data. What they were seeing is the same thing we were showing in the last slide that I shared from Mortensen, that regionally over the last year, there was about a 9% increase in the cost of construction. What this doesn't do is really kind of show the trend right here, which this is the third quarter of 22, fourth quarter of 22. This is national. What they don't show is they don't have actually show it here what's happening regionally in Portland. While down here you can see overall we're at about 9.36. So we're pretty much trending the way the rest of the nation is actually. I mean, there's a couple that are lower. I don't know why the Bay Area is as low as it is, but everybody. I mean, I don't know math. But anyway, it's still the data that we were using before pretty much holds true. But I think what we should be seeing fairly soon is that flat, I believe, of what's happening in the market. That's what we're hearing. I was hoping to get that fourth quarter from Mortensen just to see, because their graph is showing it flattening out. That being said, I'd really like to get to the exercise. Okay. What we're gonna do, you'll see that we've got these easels behind you with these boards. We'll probably want a few people to come over to this table right here. And you'll see that there is a board that we're gonna be using, and then we have these cards right here. On these cards, you'll see there's actually two colors. There's a gold color. You'll see these up here, and those will be scopes of work or potential bond work that relate to the new high school. On these other cards, you'll see a red. And these are things, scopes of work that could be done relative to the Dallas High School. I think one of the big questions that came out of the last workshop is, what are we doing with this facility, right? What we wanted to do was give everybody the opportunity to say, okay, if a new high school in its very basic level is going to cost $120 million, right? And we're looking to build $140 million bond. How do we decide on that balance, $20 million balance, right? Because there's a lot of need, but there's a very limited amount of money. So it's about priorities. How do we build this in such a way that we feel that we can get the community behind this bond?
At 140 or 140?
At 140. What we're gonna do is we're gonna build $140 million bond. That doesn't have to be exactly $140.0. It can be 141, it can be 139. But one of the things that we recognize, there's a lot of need, right? So you've got this little area down here on the bottom, additional priorities. If you feel there's something that is on one of these cards that for whatever reason they got bumped out of this $140 million range, put it down here. Because it's very likely that that particular priority might be on somebody else's board. It might just kind of raise it up a little bit. And its priority is, right? What we're gonna do is we're gonna break up at these tables. We're gonna spread these cards around, and by the way, some of these cards have some really fun images on them. If you guys can figure out what those images are, you're better off than I am. Is because we got so fast at printing these cards out that it just kind of scrambled the image. So new athletic fields, just pretend that is whoever's doing the 100-meter dash, and that's their. That's the Usain Bolt, right? Same thing with the skating with the bleachers. And then there's another one on here. This is the limited view seat from the auditorium. Everybody sat in one of those, right? Behind the column. Okay. Don't worry about the images so much. It's just kind of there as a prompt. What we're going to do to facilitate this is we're going to kind of float around from table to table. And if people have questions about the cards themselves, the money that's on the card, the scope is included, it should be listed in the very fine print right there. Will help do that. I want you to spread these cards out on the table and talk about them. And then start to determine what's a priority that we believe as a table, not an individual priority, but something that the community would find a priority to them. Does that make sense? I know that we all have our own personal kind of ideas of what's important to me as an individual in this school, but the idea here is what do we feel that the community would be able to get behind if this was move on? Okay.
And my
Yeah.
question is, there's also, another card with a bunch of question marks, because there might have been something that we haven't thought of yet.
Right.
Wild cards, there's a wild card.
Yeah.
There's
Well, yellow card, it's
one yellow card.
yeah. It has no dollar.
Yellow over there.
How are we doing on final start?
It's on. So the red cards are updates on the filter. What is that like?
The red cards are updates on the company model.
Red cards are updates on this current building.
Right, so.
We don't want to.
But what they see on here. They still don't.
$20 million.
Well, stadium in and of itself is. Typically has.
Well, so this on.
It's the new, $120 million.
Yeah.
It does.
It does.
Well, it won't go on. Jim large, so this. Other in the portion.
That's like what we're doing right now. I like to say, I mean, I've been out. JV,
Yeah.
like I wrestle volleyball. One was here and the JV.
There still hasn't been something. Because this one needs to be at least the next 10 years.
Yeah.
But there is, yeah.
One space for.
And are really, is that other little ships still across from the Kirk? So there's really a competition when there's another one. It's really low.
Yeah, we use that for red glasses.
Building as it is.
So I, yeah.
Yeah.
So we should not have.
More classrooms, more CPE space, larger common spaces, larger media center. By the way, that would actually take the space we have and put it on the site, which.
Increased capacity.
Okay, so that would be.
Kind of on.
On the campus. That site, again, I'm not here to make this statement, but generally speaking, now state. So best practice, anybody on plan. Project made whatever you want. Site intentionally separated out. So you have to main campus, so they feel like they have their own identity, they're not just a program now. So, but yes. Well, in general, yes. This is not so much. Because we have one spot.
But.
So the increased capacity.
I can only.
To us. So we might have.
So it helps the existing.
Right now, look, literally this one right here. So that's probably 40% of the park.
So I know, I'm saying that part of construction, but still.
I never had the young one, but I had the one in my room on one of my criteria.
So anyway.
They do that, so I wish we did.
Because in my mind, what you're doing is you're really, you can think about it, it's like this thing, this one started, something and it's on.
Right.
And the adequate focusing only on instruction and the.
Well, I'm assuming that these rooms are totally.
By the way, that.
That are here as far as.
You're building. There'll be some. There's gonna be money is going to. I think that's like. Yeah.
Yeah, it checks a bunch of them because.
Yeah. Always. And commentary.
Yeah, so.
And have like, have practice with people like that.
No, it's just. Service. Yeah.
Probably not. Whatever else.
Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah.
Go look at that. Still there. Still like. No, it does, it has to go back.
The windows are, yeah. And the other thing about it, you know, it's so many people I mean, they don't we let some people. And so, I mean, do we charge them for that?
Yeah, but it's not really,
Yeah.
we do, but it's not.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, like, that would be the number two, because I think that like. Saving money. It needs to be to like. Field capacity for.
We're really good at using old. And so the more we pare down, the better.
You should see the stuff they do. It's not the whole, air compressor. The air compressor, like,
I should know better after having.
Question.
Wow. So.
Yeah, yes, I mean, I want to say this is why. I had my daughter. So 15 minutes. You know, and that's obviously the possibility. So long term.
Yeah, I, what I'm bringing up with this. They can just.
We've been losing one side.
Yeah, they're gonna.
I don't know. I have no answers.
So where is the new building now in relationship to the company?
Well, right now, if it were, so this,
East of it?
if this, I mean, I don't, so where that's been going on, it's done in the south corner.
Yeah.
And that.
Like southwest. corner.
Yeah.
Southwest.
Where the baseball field is, was for the complex, essentially. That's like center where they would.
If the plant. We have to go there. It's still kind of demo and everything else, so that's probably.
So that just makes more clearance space between the elementary and the high school. They're like, they're back to that.
Yeah.
They're more like this, right? So they'll be.
So they got that. parking lot running, so there, you could run that parking lot between, yeah, you could run the parking lot between the two buildings. So kind of with the busing. It's way there. He would have to look out. He does and it helped. So just say. It's like. I mean, right now, it's just, this is, we're used to traveling everywhere and. And I would almost, this, I mean, they could make it 6 nugget and try to turn down 10. I mean, this one is.
Making it out with the required grounding for this, because they would still have, this is a killer. We're getting kind of right, yeah. Only travel would require for like game day. We do it, it's practice. You're gonna have a gym.
Yeah, they always ran the fields. Baseball.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. So if this was kind of crap.
Yeah, so when I pencil this all out and what you can do is even if I. The dream is out of $200 million. You demo 3 buildings. And then you have yeah, Kenwood Elementary here, Kenwood Middle. It's building, any building.
Maybe train them for it's out of the way of traffic.
Yeah, but even if you did. I would be this. Well, the entire state was.
I taught it tighter than the name. Ball field was there, but.
Measure the distance. So they have to go. Most of the, well, it's about half of them. They do, yeah, I mean, we're across the street. Yeah, front like, I mean, like, that's right. Yeah, but like, I mean, we're the worst when it comes to travel.
But we're the worst.
Grandfathering in this.
I know, I'm talking about it.
Talking about after school.
I'm talking about after, yeah, yeah. So we're an average of 1 year.
That's part of, that's part of the wood 40. Yes. Yeah. That's say if we have additional funding, we will, so you can say, we also want this position.
These are all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it would be. That's where the mystery part, if you want to do something else here, you can add on. So there's one that's very bad, like card.
And in our research, it's funded parking for students.
So Rich, the increase in capacity or no? Increase in parking.
The question of how much more. They keep going, so it's a question of what's enough. Yeah. Obviously, you have the minimal amount now.
Does the state say anything about required parking on commercial buildings?
The city has a parking limit, but it's not very large. I don't think anybody's writing that code to the city of the Dallas. About that, so it's kind of. It's like 2 per class or something ridiculously small.
Yeah, for example, Fred Meyer, they have required.
Oh, yeah, for commercial.
And then the minute they get that part, signature on a few years later, they cut down how many parking there are. I think you're right. I don't think they pay a whole lot.
So in high school, it's always hard to say what the right numbers should be. Obviously, over years, the increase in parking has gone way out. I go off to find a place to park. So, you know, not good for the neighborhood because they'll park down.
Yeah, this start to this bill.
To this building.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be like, so, okay, yes, we're gonna do it. 140.
Yeah, then you go down here. Because if there's something really important, yeah, you can put anything you want down here. Just like, hey, you know, we really think we want to use up 140 years, but there's one or two other things that we really think are important. The reason this is like, what do they call the voting? They do it last where you vote for your second choice. This is a great choice, so that all of a sudden we find that by common denominator, everybody has this one. One of those microphones.
So what did you,
I just pulled out a few that kind of have come up
but it's still,
for this potentially.
there's no way.
Well, now when you have to take, you have to add that one to third down, which I think was one thing down.
Why would
Yeah, yeah.
Prepared pedestrian to be prepared roadway and parking.
You've got to do work on something to use it. Even if that's the one, well, so you have to do that for, you're gonna use it for office building. Okay, you're an early child. You don't have to do that for the. We're gonna say. You could designate one area to be the DO and make that one designated area. Like you come into the computer center, that's DEA stuff. Not if you're in the DO. We're like, right, you're the DO, right? But you have to do the work here before any of this other. Big giant leak onto that.
there is a way to retry the rest.
We're not gonna talk to this right now.
On what?
I'm not.
We've got, we added.
Again, I thought.
Nobody told you.
Yeah. Well, they're brand new, not only that, and they have. Brand new. No, no lights. No, no Wi-Fi, no lights, but hey, the brand new,
So. Like, there's a lot of these additional things. We definitely confirmed on these two,
So we're
but
gonna start taking some of these up.
yeah, those can go ahead. I don't know if this is even.
I think down the road, down the road, that's right here, down the road, you got this.
If we should do this one down the road necessarily, because like with track and all your other sports, there are people who are in theater and there are things. that have- And so there's a theater, the new one.
Black box theater, you know, bunch what you got.
I was like, there's no theater though.
I would be slim.
A smaller auditorium.
That,
But the idea that
This is.
major proponents,
That's not great, just big one here.
that is actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a beautiful auditorium. Let's hit her downtown. Now, like, for example,
Well,
this,
yeah,
this stage is the one that's thinking
got it.
for a lot of.
Yeah,
So that number,
Yes.
I'm not saying
that's, it's a big number, but what that includes is all new seating, all new carpet, all new rigging, all new lighting, all new audio, all new sound.
versus if you do this, it's cheaper and they have a new, brand new theater.
Make that a modern, almost
On site. That's why I'm saying this is this budgetary one, this might be better than.
where at.
The other thing is that something like that, if that was all done, and I saw this in they showed a brand new theater. It's not attached to the high school, but it's walking distance, and there's parking in between it, so it became also, and it is still now a theater that the community uses and charging.
Did they check it every?
I don't think they use it every night.
This theater is
What's that?
Well, there's boiler.
Using that?
Right.
Yeah, so you can see. The question is, I mean, they should be talked about this thing.
Yeah.
So if you're, in my mind,
That's that amount of money, this out of the plan, that's where.
spending to get rid of this one.
But that's only 400. This one's
It,
20.
it
You know
is.
what you got to try.
Oh.
You're spending-
Yeah.
I see, I stand.
I did never doubt.
That's what I said.
Yeah, I mean, I see it using the money better in the new. Doesn't house all them, we don't need to house all them in the theater. Yeah.
In this,
Yeah.
On that.
In any.
that's what it is.
Yes.
We don't,
they have-
yeah, but this right here does.
This is for that. That's for-
Oh, tell me though, at the new high school, the 121, that's for new high school.
If you're not gonna use the current building.
Yeah, and a new facility, and there, you know, they don't have. But you. have to think out the way you're- It's like a military. Most of the time, it's like what you're doing. Yes.
Yep.
It's the thing about this, so $1 million, so you'll sit empty for 90 days. There's always. Eat it all day long and it's never.
Yeah, it has to be done by, you guys placed my child in the classroom. It wasn't done by an electrician.
Drama class already has the black box.
New building, you've got your plans. Have this one for communities. But that's a 4.4 is a countdown.
But it's like, you're a historic building and then you're gonna finish it.
It says you- For production.
Yeah. Yeah, there's use that, you would use that. Quite honestly, I don't think I've ever seen it.
If there's not facility production, then
Maybe, what about awards? Scholarship award.
it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's what happened now.
I think, so there's 5.2, oh no, not, there's less than 5.2, there's 3.8 those left to 140. Yeah, or we throw it under like security in that.
But what about comparison? But where are we, there is building?
We wanna look at.
The roof right there. Low upgrades, roof.
I would put that even up in the high. Oh, and we basically scratched these like existing nice, basically all. Yeah, with using this for because we're going to also be, I mean, would you guys for 82?
Yeah, you're. Office space. If you get it.
Sounds like, you know.
What year were you? 10, by the way, it's 10 after.
Yeah, they had to carry up broken heart later. And you didn't know it. I didn't know how to operate.
Parents had to give you $5 every day, so I could just go to a restaurant.
You didn't look at it. I'm interested in your like.
And how many times can you tell what the
It's a real thing. You've done that.
It's.
They understand that.
Well, that's what we were saying.
5 years, whatever.
If you had a ball.
Yeah, I wish they were.
But you could, I mean, we can't make this.
That's fine.
There's not parking lot there.
Except you gotta send it.
So you gotta-
That's-
My favorite man here, so.
Sorry. Do we know how much CMS is?
No, but
I think it's about a million.
so we're on, we're okay.
I would personally say, well, actually, that's that.
Yeah. Through parking including.
Say we don't upgrade these things, and there isn't a disaster with that. And then does the insurance cover it, or is it better than us? Or do we upgrade them so we don't have a disaster?
Well, yeah, they, the build, you know,
Yeah, there's no high school.
sort of building like that.
So the same.
Yeah, so the bars are like,
All you need is staff.
oh, you just, I mean.
This is a much nicer. Much nicer.
That's the wild part, electrical upgrade,
And I'm glad they're talking
lighting.
about that, start offloading some of these things.
Second early education.
Uh,
Yeah, they just across the board. But I think we're, we don't know.
Well,
what
I think the new one,
And it was.
it's up to me. I mean, they're gonna have one or two main.
I would imagine they probably have that on.
We get a lot of them.
So where are we at to 140 over there?
Yeah.
So
So
even.
9 is 15, 16, 17, 19, and
10 years ago, it was, 10 years ago, tax, and 15 years. ago.
Wild card, got it.
Side,
Yeah.
someone snuck in there and tried to like.
I know.
Like, it's fun, you've never like had a bonfire.
Like, at least bring some.
Like, why do you like give you a lesson on how to? I mean, every farmer knows a cocktail, diesel and oil and gas.
My
So you
dad.
start your bonfire.
My dad built a spray
The same house again.
for a farmer. Store it at the middle.
It's a plant, it's a.
If it's a high.
So for 900 extra.
I have to go in the hottest part of the building, next to the fireworks.
it's concrete and marble.
My favorite thing about this building is the fire door comes down, it's so hot.
Yes, I think you can do my favorite story.
That was saying. The demo.
What's her name?
Practice field.
Yep, my-
Trying to get people to actually call for this thing.
No, no,
Some
no.
of these things aren't gonna happen.
Maybe even if it's not those, on the outside.
Just down here.
Down there is like the extra one. Most people that we kind of all agree
It's just gonna be.
at the windows without updating the HVAC. Or there's this, but.
Tell us. It's
Well, it's, but if you are, you still have shitty windows, like the windows will do.
I think so.
just.
It depends on where you are in the building. That's true versus an office space.
Got about 200,000 to renew EMS. 1.2 million.
If we're just tearing it down and not doing anything.
Well, I think there's certain, I believe that. It's like you see, goes down, it's this little. Seating area that goes right down. So it has to be. You have to maintain. And I don't know if it happens.
Just like my other
So I have to qualify.
Who doesn't get wrapped?
Yeah, so it doesn't get.
That Like, literally, it's a nice, because it's literally, you feel like walking on it.
It's a great softball stadium or it's too small for the soccer. Dig into the hillside. And you can almost do two soccer. Not how many, it has to-
I like that one, but so what's the first level here? That's about.
See, that's. I think so too. I think we passed it. If you have athletics. That's enough.
Yeah, then we have fine.
Good word.
I was still teaching.
There's still maybe.
But this is upgrade, so.
Yes.
Compared to that one that was not a whole lot taller. Yeah, there is a blue.
Yeah, actually, now that you think that.
I just don't think. In my opinion, I don't think you get anybody on board if there's nothing.
Or.
We do use it. We do use it.
So-
Yeah. Really like this, hey, turn out.
Yeah.
I think from.
I don't think it's a problem. I don't think that it's a problem. I mean, but I don't, I just think that you're not gonna, this bill doesn't pass. It still doesn't pass.
Absolutely. What it does is- So then why would you? That building down to 45? Try to burn it down. Biggest liability.
It hurts to say it like have to do, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna go up. We got it.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I was up there, I mean, I was there. Yeah, I was up there. Well, now when I think. And but they were. And another table was like.
It's like.
Still, I went like. It was feeling.
Something different. Far have been.
I went up on the roof, up there for 30 minutes. And after.
Yeah, and I'm.
Yeah. And I'm like, walk up there and just look at it. Where's the green squad?
It's just the roof.
And now water that's going. Yeah, and so that water just stayed there. So go look at yeah, that was, yeah. We keep it because one, it costs $20. Two,
Yeah.
I think the children haven't stopped paying our school. I believe like it's changed the zoning, and so that it becomes a be a question.
You mentioned that area is the board.
Yeah, that's like there, that's what, yeah, like half that was border between the urban boundary and the city here. Okay, it goes right, yeah, it's right to that property.
Is that the case you might come because worked on an artist?
Yeah. Find artifacts, yeah.
I don't know. They don't want to settle permits for where I work and.
But it
they
doesn't
don't have this old life.
Yeah.
Right now, they're requiring someone.
So let's say that it is modified.
Total
5
years. 100 people.
But we only did, so we're.
So I think it can trigger that, I think that's all part of the, so.
That's the.
Football equipment, right? No. Is everybody ready?
No.
No. Close. Close. That's without, all right. There's a lot of.
If we're with removing the general.
That's a good question.
Otherwise.
Every table
What's on. the
needs
number.
to select a spokesperson
That's me.
and make sure there's no there. Which.
Well, you round down.
Which people would like to go first?
Well, it's already. Oh, I could be.
He's over here.
Hey, you guys wanna all get up, move a little bit, we'll move to our 11th. Okay, and then we'll just migrate. Probably wanna move that. Yeah.
And then you're gonna track that one around
So I'd like to give each one of the tables 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, about 5 minutes for each board. And then that way, if there are questions, and now remember, there are no wrong boards. I'm sure every table has kind of come up with some priorities. You're all labeling, right? That's fine. But let's give each one of these tables an opportunity to kind of report back something. Kind of explain what is, we went through this process at the first workshop, and what we started to see was some trends that were happening. We did have about 30 minutes.
Some considerations, I think, where we wanted to do the input approval here. That is still going a broad range of things we haven't what will here. There were some improvements that we thought, well, we wouldn't want to do that necessarily until really what the purpose is. One of those great things here could be done. So some of those would be roofing, ADA, recommendations, and ways. I don't know, had a lot to choose from, but there's kind of chosen and the map is 130. But if we wanted to do instead, it's still allow people to use it safely in the future, knowing that in some sort of it's just not knowing what exactly that would be. When it comes to the new school, we were pretty clear and unanimous around the increase in capacity. This is after all about educational learning experiences and outcomes, and so we felt that was important in a future school. And then we went around and back on the future of the reporting complex, and there's a lot of variables there. But what we ended up deciding to do was removing the Conco field and at least getting the practice facilities in place, thinking that in the future, 5 years, 10 years, you could start looking at new athletic field because you were kind of doing some of the prep work already. And you could potentially fund that through other means if you sell property or do some local fundraising. And this would be something that we thought that the community would actually potentially pitch in some funds if you're doing a capital. So that was our logic of how we broke up the sporting complex. In the perfect world, we would have done those together, but again, finite funds, so that's how we decided to break it up. We did go a little over because you said you could go like 141. So we took the 141 and we thought, it's a rounding error. So when we're out there talking, just say it's about $140 million bond, and we're not lying. So we wanted to get as much as we possibly could out of it. I have not.
It's about $1 million.
So that's any questions?
Did anybody put HVAC upgrades on?
not electric.
Take it off.
As he hears the radiator.
I-
back.
Sounds like a tap show in the background.
Somebody's frantically changing their cards right now.
So, no.
It still works.
Just don't touch it because you'll burn yourself.
That's right.
Is that what you?
Yeah,
just don't touch it.
Are there any questions on their board? This is really good.
The struggle is real.
Okay. Let's do board number 2 over here. We'll just go down the line, I guess.
So, we were of the same opinion about the increased capacity. One of the questions, though, that was noted is that what's the academy? Innovations Academy would be included in that. And there was kind of some mixed feelings because of what we heard from some of the students that they actually preferred being separated. So, that was the reason that we did not do the demo with Tonka, because there was just that feeling that some of those kids wanted to remain separate. So that maybe this number could slightly go down if we didn't move the Innovations Academy there, because they'll have like increased capacity. We felt that the new stadium, if we're gonna have this beautiful new school, that our existing stadium, kids' words is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. The track is embarrassing. The bleachers are embarrassing. Everything about it. They go to these other schools and I hear over and over again, why can't our school look like this? So to spend the money on the school, the stadium's right next to it. We felt that was important. Right when we finished, this one kind of started to waffle. Because Jill was telling us about this new facility that they're going to be making. That's going to have the state of the art fields that the kids could walk to. And so does, and we also want to have a bond that's going to pass. So this puts us at 143 with ours. So this one's kind of, yeah, it's floating right now. Everything in red, the red cards, we felt we could deal with when we sell properties. As we sell properties, that money can be used to take care of the things needed for the existing school.
So were there anything on the red cards?
The only one that we kind of was the ADA, to make it ADA.
Why don't you go ahead and put that one?
No, we don't want red.
Well, I think one of the things we'll talk a little bit later is, one of the big questions, particularly came out of the polling, was what's really gonna happen with this school? And so it's something that we can't ignore. And I think a lot of the discussions that are gonna happen after this point are gonna be centered around the new school. And if we could just kind of understand, if we were to put any money here, what do you think would be the best use of those funds?
Are we adding all the?
One of the other considerations was using the $4 million state grant to lower the cost of that.
Okay,
Instead of use it for the, whatever the total is, to take off $4 million.
At the end of the day, we start talking about, do we just go back to 120 and get it passed? Because at the end of the day, we need to get it passed.
Is the $4 million state grant already off the basis, right?
no, the $4 million is money that will come to this effort if the bond passes.
And the other thing I will say is that, and this is kind of a nuance, but it's important to understand. We are eligible for the $4 million. Depending on the cycle and who applies, they may not be able to fund it. Okay. As of, recent elections, they have been able to fund every district that has passed a bond after and now. But the way that program is set up, if there isn't adequate funding, and remember, we're heading into the long session, starting here very soon. Any changes that they talk about budget that impacts that fund could potentially create a scenario where we're not funded, even though we're eligible, which would be a bummer. So personally, I trend on the conservative side, and I'd rather not count on the 4 million and make sure that we don't sell ourselves short. And then if we're in that scenario that they can't fund the grant for whatever reason, we're not having to cut something that we actually want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'd rather have that 4 million augment the contingency, because as we know, as you do the construction and build things, there are a lot of variables you don't have a lot of control over. And sometimes you're just gonna have to
pivot or react and, have some additional expenditures that you didn't contemplate. So I caution us to not sell ourselves short and make sure that whatever we want is fully captured with the bond.
Any questions on their board? No? Let's go down to the next one over here.
So. We talked about the increased capacity and demoing with Honka, but we had the same discussion that you guys did on yours about the facility for innovations. And they discussed how there would still be a separate facility if they did that expansion for them. And so we were more towards that after we found that out. So those two, and because they would have separate space, we could demo that and have better practice fields, so we don't have to bus people to practice every single day. We still have our competition field wherever, and we can butt for that, but the day-to-day people can walk to practice. Then we looked at some roofing upgrades for this facility because we don't want ceiling to fall in on even the facility when you have all the faculty here, and improving the ADA, because even if you're faculty or anyone else getting in there, it's, if you've ever been in a situation where you can't use your legs, you're already feeling vulnerable. Finding out that you have to go a million ways when you can't use your legs, that's just torture. So, and another kind of wish list, one of the question marks, remove Chenoweth Middle School. It's sitting there, costing money, maybe something, or maybe potentially if you didn't do that, maybe just upgrade the bleachers. Get better bleachers. They're probably going to be cheaper than building a stadium or redoing a track facility that can just, update and maintain, and it's still going to be functional and work as it. There's some wish list of window replacement. We're split between this and HVAC. This makes more sense energy wise to replace the windows before you replace your cooling system. Otherwise, all of that stuff is just going out the window anyways, and safety and security, because you can get in here 20 which way. So questions?
Removing CMS was,
Chenoweth Middle School. Yeah.
was estimating, I think he said less than $1 million.
Oh, it was less than, so yeah, so even with that, we actually had roughly what, 2 point something million left over in.
Yes.
So-
Yes,
I think that that was Stella. He's putting the demo.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
demoing it, but I thought didn't she tell us it was less than $1 million?
Well, I think we weren't sure, but I
I think the number is, 20 years ago was 300,000 and then it went up to 500,000. So I figured it's 500,000.
It's a security risk and it's being vandalized, it's boarded up, we don't even know what kind of condition. He was on the roof and it's a lake up there.
I thought you were referring to the numbers that Kara put out.
No,
no.
That's what I'm saying.
that was the White House. So this is the Chenoweth Middle School,
Yeah.
next to the White House.
So,
And repurpose it for an athletic field.
A field or something.
and then we should still have money left over for bleachers. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm starting to see a couple of trends here, but
I think it's a given on almost all of them is the size of the school, increased capacity.
I think once we get down to the end.
Yeah.
I think there's a question there that I want to ask.
Okay,
When we come back to it, is that? No.
Keep
As
going.
far as what that capacity means to people, but let's go ahead and report back on the other thing here.
I guess
You came in late.
I told you. 30 minutes early. All right, so obviously, one of the things that we wanted increased capacity. One of the things that we talked about at our table was the sheer fact of what is one of the problems that we're dealing with right now. And if we want to think 50 years in the future, we don't want to just sit here and be like, let's do this today. We got to think about the Dalles for 50 years, not today. So I believe that, and I believe my group also believe that this is top priority. And with, as far as the athletic fields go, We don't believe that you'll get voter support without athletic fields, without some sort of mentioning to it. We think it's a higher priority than, maybe we don't want this to be the priority because we would like to spend money elsewhere. But we're not tasked to tell everybody what we want. We also have to think like our peers, and that's why we're all here, because we all have different friends and different groups, and we just believe that we don't have voter support without fixing our children running all over town just to play athletics. So that was a priority for us. I'm kind of seeing here, we said it was a political priority, is kind of what we did.
We budgeted less for that too.
And we said 5 million instead of 7.6. Just because, I mean, as far as building field, there, we don't have to make the Taj Mahal. That's probably a number for getting a pretty dang nice facility, but we can find some ways to save some cash on that. We believe. And then we also thought that the windows would be a priority from a conservation of the building standpoint. You don't replace certain like windows and roofing. If you don't replace these items, I could show you 1,000 homes throughout our neighborhood that are falling apart because of these items. So these are top priorities if we want this building to stay up when it's not being utilized as much as it's being utilized. Safety and security, kind of a no-brainer. Same thing you guys all feel, too many entryways and just making it a little bit more. Then our additional priorities were just, nice things to think about, but probably not going to be included. Electrical upgrades, plumbing, and HVAC in the interior finishes. But, I saw from this group over here, and I like the idea of fund this out of property. That's my opinion. That's not the group's opinion. But I really keyed in on that when you guys said that. So that was a great idea. Because you can totally fund that with all the property that's out there. And that's us. Anybody have any questions on that?
So why did you put the one kind of halfway on, halfway off?
I don't know.
That's our man.
Well,
It's there.
you really wanted that up. You were already at 142 million.
Yeah.
Shown where there's a provision on the part itself.
Yeah.
We did,
One up there like with the field upgrade, but they put in.
but I promise if I win that $1 billion, I'm saying it
I know.
publicly.
Gonna build the whole school.
Honey, but
I would. Pay the tax.
I'll take care of the athletics.
Me too, yeah.
Okay.
Me in. My question is, how important is security and safety if this ends up being a district office and things like that?
Well, something has to be done.
Well, we were told it was gonna be early childhood development, that sort of stuff, so.
Well, closed.
I mean, that's not a dumb idea.
Have district employees, and the little kids come in, you got 2 doors, is all you need, well, all the others shut. We've had kids that have super glued them shut, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, personally, like. I don't know why.
I
we
know it's
upgrade
only 2
anything
million,
here.
Well,
but
That's
so
what I was tasked to do.
there,
There you go. We did it.
because of the age of the facility.
Yep.
There are so many entry points,
oh, I know.
right? And there are so many ways, when somebody comes to visit this school.
Yeah.
They are never greeted by someone that can say, yes, you can come in, or no, let me get somebody else. It's really difficult to monitor what's happening throughout the campus. If there was a emergency, something happened in the neighborhood and there's a lockdown, it's difficult to lock this building down, whether it's for the childhood or whether it's students. I think that Kurt has been dealing with this. Since he's been here. It's
We locked it down, it's just.
And it's something that, with the types of things that are in the news related to it, it would be I think it's one of those things where it's definitely a legitimate item.
I understand that to some extent. I just think that we don't need to put all, are we gonna re-wall those doors? I mean, why can't we just figure out how to close down those doors?
Well, to do that, this includes electronic access controls on all of the exterior doors. So that if there's a lockdown, you can lock off automatically without going over each other.
Yeah.
It allows the replacement of door hardware on doors like this, so that a student or a teacher can walk up to that door and lock it inside their room. Cameras.
So
And I know it's
it's
not
still
very
gonna be
much.
district property.
So.
So if
there's a
it's
lot of
district
different things
property, we have to make sure it's safe.
From the standpoint of like,
Less,
yeah,
big minimum size.
whether it's small student or larger students, district office, whatever it is. That
Still
type
need
of
that.
information. So,
I mean, I was the site supervisor for SATs. And you couldn't control sometimes by the time you get one in the hall during testing time. Because somehow some door had gotten jammed open.
let's do the last board.
Can I just add something really quick to our board, just
Yeah.
really quick? So the other thought with the exterior upgrades for the roofing and the windows is not just from the green point of things. I'm gonna speak for myself personally, just to incite some thought. This end of the town needs to reflect that end of the town. An exterior, obviously, I guess it's kind of putting lipstick on a hog, but yet it's still welcoming. We're still upgrading the building, and all of those things are gonna be copacetic with heating and electricity and all that stuff.
Yep.
So,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times.
Yep.
Appearance in the building has to. It may have, it's not gonna be a whole lot, but it.
Right.
But it has
Right.
a history and and so. Showing and you care about that, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And demonstrating that throughout doing that to it. And most people, the majority of people don't go into school, we get in a group. Like that.
that'll
We've been here.
satisfy a lot of the.
How it looks
Exterior upgrades.
Yep.
Let's get to the last board. Let's get to the last board, and then I did have one question related to ones showing up on here, and then we'll. I think there's some trends. Who wants to report on the last board?
Bill does.
No, I go.
No, I can't. I was tracking on. Sorry.
All right, so I maybe a little, the only very different. So first we kind of looked at. Well. One of the main pieces that we heard from feedback is that people need to know what is going to happen to this building, what it's going to be used for, and it's hard to say now. So we just looked at what were pieces that desperately needed to be done in order for this building to be functional in any capacity. So we had Mr. Brady pick out the most vital things, which would be the envelope upgrades to the roofing, the ADA accessibility improvements, which would be needed to be used in any capacity, and electrical upgrades. But we felt like those were the most vital pieces to use this for something else, and we don't know what that is as now. So then looking at the new facility, I guess what was kind of standing out to us, and we're already getting a new school. It's always already going to be drastically better than what we have now. So what can we present as an added on bonus to the public of people who are maybe on the fence of if they're going to vote for this or not? And a really big draw in our community is athletic. So if we can have a new school, and we did not add on the increased population, but a new school and new stadium bleachers and new athletic fields. You can present that in a very pretty package. It gives the public, people who are maybe not sure if they're going to vote yes or no, athletics is a driver. And if we can present that to them, I feel like that makes a good case for a bond to be passed. Additional priorities would be increased capacity and Wetonka demo, but I mean, that really complicates things when you talk about
demoing Watonka, and then you have to look at where then those students go. That just is a complicated puzzle, but that's kind of what we have. Yeah.
Are there any questions on that one?
Quick question or comment. The $2 million to make this building ADA accessible, that number is not a number that would literally make this high school entirely ADA accessible, correct?
Correct.
Because you cannot, for $2 million, make this building, so if someone in the public comes up and says, well, if you're gonna make this building ADA accessible, why don't you just do it? And then you can keep using high school, and the answer is, my answer is that is only for if we were to repurpose this for office space or something like that. There is no way you can even conceivably make this building ADA accessible.
There are things like bathrooms that would have to be completely built. What this does, and I know Jose's got a comment down there.
Yeah.
This addresses the largest accessibility deficiencies that were identified in the facility condition analysis. And it's related to like a new elevator or two. So that you can get in between the floors easier. It is, things like lever handles on the doors instead of knobs. There's so many types of things like that. So, but to make this building completely accessible, I mean, you'd have to move doors away from walls because they're too close to the wall for ADA. Now, the nice thing about a historical building like this, there's a lot of latitude that Americans with Disabilities Act provide you relative to what you have to do because of the historical nature of the building. So it gives you some ability to kind of move the needle a little bit, but I can tell you the building's got a lot that needs to be done to make it fully accessible. Were you gonna?
Well, I wanted to add, and Kurt's right, if we're gonna have to answer this in the interview. And I think one of the things that isn't explicitly spelled out, though, that I can do some of these, inherently what's gonna happen is they're gonna have to take space from somewhere. And where is that somewhere? Probably our instructional space. So to add elevators, to expand bathrooms, to have the proper fixture count for students, right? They're gonna grow. That'll take away from instructional space, but in a facility where you already have capacity issues, you would have to add on in addition somewhere to make up the square footage you lose of instructional space for those elements that accommodate the ADA.
Yeah, for this group, I just wanted, so from a standpoint of making sure we all have answers to questions, because that's come up and I want to verify that with you guys. $2 million isn't even didn't even scratch the surface for making this ADA. A new high school, 100% of that new high school would be ADA accessible, 12-1, or I think it's 12-1. I mean, everything that's truly there would be there. But this
idea is for community use, right?
Yeah, community use or office space, and that's that's what I would envision.
Or facility use, but not as a high school.
And to Jose's point, just because I remember things by saying them out loud, to gain that accessibility for $2 million, you have to take out of operation what is currently used as classroom.
Exactly.
So
And the classrooms are horrible anyway.
I can explain that.
And then,
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's just so obvious to many of us that this is not to be a high school for very long. It really shouldn't be. So we don't attract teachers. They come in and then they go through the classroom and go, thanks for the interview, but no thanks. I mean, there's some real issues that I don't think the public understands.
So just kind of really quickly, I see two trends on these boards, and they're related to capacity and they're related to athletics. Whereas reinvestment into the existing high school is there at a certain level, but not at the level of those two particular. Oh, they want. Sorry. Does anybody? I want to make sure and be respectful of everybody's time here. This is really good information because what we do with it at this point, amongst the leadership, is take a look and see what some of these trends are. And there's some next steps that we'll go over that related to that, how this factors into some of those next steps. I also wanted to ask, has everybody gone on to the bond website?
Not right.
Okay,
I mean,
I know that there are people that are actually not in this room that have actually been going on there. Remember, all of this information, including there'll be images of these boards, that'll get posted on there. If you ever want to go back and kind of refresh your memory, just remember that all that stuff is available online, or will be. The first 4 community workshops are on there right now. The presentations. Okay.
Where did you say you could find that?
What's the bond website? It's there's a link on the districts.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go anything about us, the first tab on a farm left, it's a, that is a font line.
So Northern Wasco County, not the high school webpage, Northern Wasco County.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do a little bit of a bond timing effect. And I'm going to show you the slide because there's been a lot of discussion that's been happening on the leadership side about the timing of this bond. We get all the way to the right slide here. This is the belief upon what we heard in the last workshop that a May bond is too soon. We've seen some heads nod. There's some pros and cons that we went over in the last workshop about this. But I think there are some basic points to be made here. Number one, it supports that longer strategy to build the need. Right? Allows more time for community education around all these things that we've been talking about. It gives us a lot more opportunity to provide or dovetail the information into community events and school district events for that education. The other thing is an off-year election. I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but I think that Jeremy could probably speak to this better than I can, but typically the people that are gonna vote in an off-year election, they have a tendency to be more.
Well, they're gonna be, it's gonna be an older electorate, more engaged, the people who voted in the off-year in November election, the people who voted. The 8 hour a week last election, vote, so. You'll mirror, there's not a match difference. We voted in May of this year and we voted in I'm sorry. No. I just said that, there's not a massive difference between who's gonna vote in May of 2023 and November of 2023. It's gonna be tight and engaged people, folks who vote in every election we've got.
The other thing we put on here, and this is something that the district is not going to be involved in, but it's the development of the political action committee and the fundraising involved. That has to happen outside of the district leadership. I put it on the list here. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but I want to make sure it's done because it allows that committee to raise more money, do more education, get the information out there. It's more time. But I think what you're seeing here on the downside was really about escalation over time, but we're only talking about 6 months. 6 years. So there's a kind of a minimal amount of risk there relative to what we possibly schedule. But I think that the kind of prevailing thought at this point is that a May bonds. I think the other thing about this that is a big risk, and we'll kind of talk about this in the next steps, is the ability to maintain momentum related to this. I mean, it's great to see everyone here tonight, to be able to kind of keep that kind of enthusiasm and the willingness to get involved over this period of time. It's gonna be a bit of a lift. And it's a bit of a risk, but I think leadership has kind of made the decision as to, I think that. Any questions about this? Any questions for?
No, but I do have something relevant.
What was that?
I said I know that I do have something for relevance, but I think Jose and Mrs. Bernal can correct me. If we do May, most everyone's seat but 2 is up with the school board. So re-election will also be a topic during the May time. I think that's relevant if you're talking about momentum and things like that. So there will be those elections happening in May. And I could have the number wrong, so I'm just saying.
Three of them are.
It is a lot.
Or maybe
August too.
be up for election.
Mhm. Yeah. Hmm. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying that that's strictly relevant.
It is.
You know, depending on who's gonna run, who's gonna rerun, it's gonna be a topic. Maybe not people that run, we'll talk about it, or the re-elected, whatever, we'll talk about it. I don't know, I can't predict that, but it is relevant. I think it's relevant. And I think it's something that we need to be aware of.
Will be spearheading the pack development and fundraising.
She asked the question, do we know who would be spearheading the plaque development? And I can tell you, it's not the district. Okay.
Not the district.
It's not the school district, that they cannot get involved in. That has to be done by the community, correct?
So it has to be started from the ground up.
It's well,
With the community, like foods.
You go.
Yes and no.
No, I get that part, but I mean, the
Jose,
initial.
any of that?
I missed the question.
It's about the PAC, so just because I had emailed asking these questions, my understanding was from you that the PAC exists. It is registered and filed. And what it needs is leadership and.
Yeah, so there needs to be a transfer, and actually, Phil
Yes.
Wade is here tonight, he was involved with the last effort back in
That would be
2018.
Okay, great.
But the nice thing is everything was kept active. Now we just need, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brady, but we just need others to now kind of take over that. And kind of be the leaders for the pack and on paper with the state. Right?
Yeah, so think about it, two different part, the state requirements, so any money that comes into the PAC has to be reported to the state. So we need 2 people, one to be the president, one to be the treasurer, so that can be updated in this to the state. And then the second part of it is the people pushing things forward. And so then that's going to be the larger community. It's the current name is Strong Community Schools. Strong Community Schools.
Are you raising your hand or?
Yeah, I'm raising my hand.
Okay, we have another question over here.
In regards to the campaign, what are you guys going to provide in regards to visualizations of what we've put together? And when is that going to arrive? And so we can start promoting with those materials.
Next steps.
And here's your son.
So. I don't want to jump off the other one because we can kind of come back to it. We've been doing a little bit of brainstorming relative to kind of what is going to happen after tonight. Tonight is our last meeting. It's not to say that later on, if prior to when board action needs to be done 6 months from now, that there might be a reconvening or something to basically, there might be some adjustments or something like that. But there's a lot of things that are going to be happening that the school district is going to be doing themselves. And there are some things that the district would be asking of this group itself. you'll notice that their list is much longer than your list. Right? And it really kind of comes down to two things for you folks. Number one is about education, and number two is staying engaged, right? But as far as what they're gonna be doing, there's a couple of things. What they're gonna be doing right now, we're gonna be reviewing the recommendations that we're seeing on here, kind of formulating the next step. The other thing that we're gonna also be doing is we're gonna test this with some additional polling to see what the balance of the community is. If we're looking at increased capacity or whether athletic fields, we'll just kind of see how that plays relative to the ability to raise the level of the bond. We're going to developing a board recommendation and then potentially be some board action. If it's going to be November bond, those types of things right there. Oops. This wouldn't happen until next summer. Okay, but that's kind of the next step.
When happened to when?
Based on the original schedule of August. Oh. August, then board action, how it happened for the bond.
I thought it said
August.
That way, it'll be in June, and the thinking there was that way, if the action, build campaign, start building up.
board action is
Ready to go. In the months.
Yeah, so if we're a May bond, if we have to take board action either by the end of this month or the
Yeah.
first week. It's pretty fair. But if it's a November bond, which is who we believe we probably be doing, we've got until June.
So to her relevancy point, let's just say all 4 seats flipped on the board. When do those board members get sworn in June? July, most excellent. But my concern thought about that is, oh my gosh, we'd be bringing 4, they'd be brought up to speed irregardless, so. Potentially 4, but this is my storm thought, is if all 4 flip, the people on the board right now have a sense of what's going on. And that these meetings are happening and the website exists, etc. And that those new board members would not then be stepping right into, hey, so go ahead and make that motion to $140 million, and then that there might be a lot of loss in momentum or confusion or any of the doomsday thoughts.
Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the thought process that we want to make sure that all the effort isn't lost to your point.
Yeah.
We want the current board to vote into action. Once it's into motion, from the district level, it's an information only campaign. The real effort is the community group in the pack, right?
Okay.
So if the decision is made, nothing is going to change that community group, right? The action will have already been taken by the board. And the measure would be filed and ready to put the ballot, right?
Right.
So if there is turnover, it shouldn't really impact any of that.
Thank
There
you.
are obviously other dynamics that will change, but if it's already set in motion. I mean, I would think that if someone that is not currently in board came in and tried to say, no, community, you're not doing that, I would think they'd have a tough time trying to get elected. Right?
That's what I was thinking, there'd be political suicides.
There's a question over here, which is quite.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
your questions are really great. Let's just.
Oh, no, I do have a question. I was just
Worse than
gonna
I am.
say that maybe the, school board election might give a good read of where the community stands, because then they, what would really back somebody to support the school.
If we could reach out and make this a big deal during elections and find out who's running and what there are opinions about building a new school and making that public so people know who they're voting for.
I would think that people, would ask those questions on their own along the way. I don't think we need to start railroading anyone.
No, and I'm not saying railroad, I just I wanna know of all the personalities that are out there, who's gonna be in favor and spread the good word versus the bad word. I lived through a consolidation, I don't know, must have been the early 90s. That one word from a superintendent at the time, we were two districts, and one word from one of the superintendents, and it went down.
Well, and people can sign up at the last minute to run, so I mean, we should put that effort in, but it's really, you don't really ever know until the last day of the cutoff.
Yeah.
So. You kind of want to burn your calories where they're most well used.
The difference between the parent favorable polling that took place before the cost of the bottom, the effect and cost of that on the favorable.
So to be clear, your question is. The initial polling out, and when we did the polling for you back in, I think it was late October. We asked an initial $180 million. We asked the largest number. And it started off. It was like 20, I pulled it up, like 24, like 26% undecided. Like he was undecided, we remember that. And then from there, we gave a little more of a description of what it would do. Same cost, 180 million, but not the price per 1,000. And people from both camps increased the yes and the no to about 38 with the rest undecided. We then, if you remember, asked 4 different packages, which is why we're talking about 140, 120, because 180 went from a near even undecided to 53 no. As soon as we told them that $4 and something cost. And the 140 and 120 were the only viable numbers that got you even within a ballpark of a starting point. So it was about a 13-point swing as soon as they heard additional $4.16 per 1,000 at that 180. It's just yeah. So we lost supporters immediately into the no camp.
I think that's one of why the expert time.
Yeah.
Maybe if Jeremy could sit here. If this was a different polling result, the recommendation, if we were at 60% or something, we would be going from a on it because we wanted the fact that it's sort of reversed. You don't want people to change their mind.
100%.
We are built this to get to that point, we're going to build the community support. But one of the big things that we hear is what's happening in the school where the unknowns are still out there. And so that takes time, both all those factors we saw, as well as to educate the community as to what are the plans so that everybody's confident. And that's one of the things that last field time was the unknowns. It wasn't that everything was a bad idea. It was, we don't know what the idea is. So this is strong. Your point about visualization, those are things that Devon currently not part of this work that we're doing right now. That Devon campaign and create partners who else they can hire folks or ourselves or others to create visuals, imaginary buildings. But what it could be like, all those things are done, and there's different degrees of which one can create material and hire other people to help in the marketing. That's all outside of this effort that we're doing.
But to the polling and to the list consideration of the following, sorry, I'm going to jump on you, but like the poll made it very clear, you heard me say this many times, that the community needs an answer for what they're going to do with this space. So I'll let
Okay. There are some things that the district is going to be doing next. We kind of went through that list of questions, but we're redeveloping that frequently asked questions list so that you have this. You ask you a question. There's probably almost like an elevator speech, and somebody comes up and asks you a question, why I still need to convince you to give me the 2 sentences, this and that. Very clear messaging. But they're also constantly looking at other funding sources to do improvements to the facilities themselves. Grant applications that are being explored, other funding streams. But I think one of the things that we talked about in the last meeting, and this is an educational thing, is the development of a facilities group. I think there was a question of how do you get involved, how do you understand what's happening within the schools, what are things that need to be done. I think that development of that facilities group is the very first task. Other things that are being considered. One of them is the broader community education, and it goes back to your question about maybe 360 videos in school, open houses, any of that marketing type of form that can be shared. The other thing is something that we've been talking about. Well, one of them is the creation of a community liaison group. I'm trying to remember the way to explain that one. There was the visioning group for the high school, which was kind of a recommendation that kind of came about our discussions on how to school. And we can talk a little bit more on this next slide, but that's about what is the vision for this high school if the new high school is built. It includes a lot of things we've talked about here. One of the things that the school district has talked about is a comprehensive youth service program, where this facility be the place where you can go from birth to graduation, whatever the services that the community needs outside of just the normal functions that you can see in the school. We had a early childhood intervention. I think part of the FAQs might include this, but this visioning group might be something that could be happening. We're considering doing. I can kind of on this slide part it's like listening for. Because one of the things that came out of the polling is the strong commitment to the school. What's happening? What's going to happen to the Dallas High School? I don't think you're going to be able to pass a bond without answer that.
Maybe on that one, because I think maybe some of the people here, some discussion about that. The district has had a lot of conversations with the community partners. A little bit of a chicken and egg, you can't promise face that you don't have to pass the bonds and replace the school. But you know, I'm kind of listening to we could, sessions like this, we develop in the next 3 or 4 months. So we focus so much on the other buildings, but to focus on what would the community want to see in here. Some ideas if we bring to the table, maybe elicit things like the meetings for other people to come to the table to talk about, what should be here, what could be here, and that may could influence what eventually the community does. So maybe there's haven't been talked about, and so I think we think, and I know Jeremy thinks too, that this is like equally. You got the new school, you got the existing school. Yeah. We need to kind of bring that up. One of the reasons having this 4 months, because once we're 3 or 4 months, once we get in towards making that board decision, then we're more locked down on what can be investigated in some district facilitated effort. This seems like a really important thing. So that's an active discussion. This really started last week, but we think it could really be a good way to focus a little more detailed on this building. What are the options? How much space would the various things pay? And it was, as Steve said, it could be a full range from, okay to some adult services, who knows? It's a relatively good sized building. Also, the relocation possibilities. That's part of what was being discussed in terms of what the value of the White House. If we move it out over here, how much space would that take? So that analysis hasn't been done yet, but over the next few months, that seems like a real opportunity to build a stronger knowledge about what the community and what can happen to this really great building. All of its memories, maybe not in its actual structure. ADA access.
This is our last slide. I think that's the way to kind of wrap this up. I think there's still a lot of work to do. Does anybody have any kind of last questions?
For these different committees or subcommittees you guys are talking about, is there going to be something sent out to us as a community, or is it something where people already have it in their mind? How are we going to start that?
Yeah, the facilities work group, I will email this group and would love to have some folks attend from that, and then I'll also put it out publicly. So other people can- We haven't finished formulating how we're going to organize the meeting and liaison group, but if you email Stephanie, I'm sure she would help coordinate if you want involved there. Oh, it's Robin's fault.
It was Robin, sorry.
It was
But
me.
I will be sending a follow-up email as I usually do, and it will contain information regarding different groups we may be soliciting.
I wasn't putting you on the spot, just saying. I'll do one because she's stepped up.
What was the last number of the block, last spot?
What was the last one?
250.
It was very complicated because it was a huge bond that was going to include new high school and 3 new elementary schools
Over,
over 40 years. So it's apples and oranges
Yeah, but how much less?
for the just for the high school.
No.
I think it's a good question for them to use.
oh yeah,
That's what.
So that
Yeah.
they can understand what went up a lot last.
Yeah, I think it's too.
and all I have to say is more than you were willing to pay. Don't worry. Just kidding. Yeah, I think that's perfect for the FAQ, like. The run.
I was a leader of the back group in the last group. Things were different. And one thing that really hit us, things come out of left field, was the Kavanaugh hearings happened right before that. And that energized a group of voters that became adamant, and one of my most savvy political advisors saying that really affected us. Some people would say, no, that couldn't have been. But things were going to come out in left field. I feel much more confident in this group that you have assembled here. Our group really worked hard, but this group has a much better foundation than we have.
Well. No, not really, but. No, I think as a leader, putting forward certainly things that it's typically when you do a recommendation to the board, it's a very kind of generalized description of what you. Sometimes it's too much information. So there's a lot of detail that we included in each one of these. We have not really got every detail, but what we could potentially just say, bond with for increased capacity of the high school to the innovation capacity, which won't say much, the idea is to apply another information that we will use to bring and what's going to happen is this group here, just an advisory group. The bond formed by the leadership group and then we kind of have recommendation. So yes,
Maybe an answer to this, we get a lot of these. This is actually way more consistent than sometimes you'll do this, let me really different. There's some differences here, recognizable differences. Some with athletics, some without. I think the reality though is there's a lot of consistency and the polling really in the end, the district is going to be like how do some of these things rank out. So I think we could take this and we'll actually take this and put the number of, but we'll actually rank them, like how many people put this one got 5 votes, this one got 3, that got 2. So that will come out of this in the final report for this meeting. It'll show how these all came out and how they ranked. That's probably enough information coming out of this group to say that's a kind of enough recommendation. These are the priorities that we're given, and here's the variations between these two. And those are going to end up being hold as well as this discussion with the board to say, hey, where does the board think on all this recommendation? The pieces go. I know that you could as a group decide, yeah, let's take a vote and vote for one of these boards or vote for each piece, but I don't know where the each is on how the system.
It's interesting when I think the main recommendation that's really coming out of this group is probably has to be in the first workshop.
So we didn't have to come to all these meetings.
She wanted to know, what does polling need to look like for the board to be more comfortable?
Yeah, there's no hard and fast rule because every community is different, and so, you know, you have said 60%. If you're sitting at 60, of course, and we're not going to be sitting at 60, that's not your community. And so, like, if it's more a place that it's used to passing tax measures for school, I would say you have some standards. For you, I think it's going to be more about, is there movement? Have we had an opportunity to see movement from where you were in October to now? What is the reaction to the exact package that you all have roughly put together that will be finalized? Like in that exact price point, and then so I wish I could say you have to be at least 53% with it's more how much opposition do you have versus how much support do you have? How much undecided? Is there room to grow? Like, or is it 50-50 and then it's going to be a battle of attrition, right? Those types of things. So but I will give my team will give our best recommendations to the board and to the leadership about whether we think it's viable, what's your path, and you know what those elements are. So once did that answer?
Do they always follow your recommendation?
What's that?
Do they always follow your recommendation?
No. Most of the time. Yeah.
I'm still concerned about the prospect of campaigning as we're being recommended without any visualization of this building. I understand that we don't want to pigeonhole architects into designing a certain way or building a certain building in a certain way without having a final deal, but the suggestion of asking another firm to create a visualization, I think, is even more convoluted solution. So you have a better solution for us to create something that we can go to campaign with?
It's a great question because I think that sometimes visualizations that are presenting what appears to be the final design could potentially work against you. In some instances, you can present something out there that they've already got their mind made up. It's going to be this spaceship that is landing in the middle of a cornfield. There's no way I'm going to go with that. What you have to do is, during the bond campaign, be very careful about the types of images or visualizations that you're providing, and make sure that they speak to what that means. If it is things like, warm, safe, and dry, give them images that are going to explain that at first glance to the people that are looking. I think we're doing like our renderings. We've done this for different districts, and I'll be honest with you, more oftentimes than not, it hasn't gone the district's way.
So it is better to campaign without any render of a potential building, or I'm just curious.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is, typically, I don't know if you would really want to give them an image of a new builder.
You might give them images, either photographs of similar buildings, have some image of the street of an interior. It's a tricky thing. You have to work on it.